Joining me is Annette Borger, is a professor at Humber College, where she teaches the graduate program in public relations in the Faculty of Media and Creative Arts. Thank you for joining us, Annette. You're here in Toronto, and we're going to talk about something that people have been talking about for the last week, maybe even 2 weeks, and that is the recent sacking of Lisa LaFlamme from CTV's national news program. And the fallout continues to generate a lot of news and commentary. Just this week, we saw Wendy's put out a social media where they changed the iconic Wendy logo and had her in gray. And then we had Dove Soap put out another social media on loving people regardless of what age and what hair style they have. So we're seeing now private sector companies using this incident as a way of branding and keeping this issue alive in people's minds.
Yeah, it has been, I think now it's 2 weeks of outrage on the social, and every day there's something new that's coming through. And yes, Wendy's, Dove, Sports Illustrated, this story has also gone around the world in outlets. It is a topic of great discussion. And I'm absolutely gutted. When the news came out last week of Lisa, who is at the top of her game, just one of the most quintessential professionals, a leader, an award winner, heading up sort of, a national broadcast, number one in their spot. To have this happen, you have to take pause and go, what's up? Like, this is just not right. And for me, when I reflect on it, it was the absolute lack of humanity, that there was a callousness that came across, that there was, an insensitivity. And, we're all professionals, we can all believe that, these things happen, but these things don't happen in this way. And so it's been interesting to see all the fallout, and rightly so. The one, thing that is taking place is this conversation about ageism. And something that women of a certain age, me being one of them, have come to, sort of acknowledge.
No, I 100% agree. And, I'm trying to recall, two iconic newscasters, Mansbridge and Robertson. They were working well into their 70s and later, and they were given a hero's send-off. And then what happened to Lisa was just, completely, she was actually told back at the end of June that she was not being rehired, or her contract was not being renewed. And then it only came out in the last 2 weeks in August. So there was about a 6-week gap between when she was told and when she went on Twitter with a video talking about how she was gutted of finding out this information.
Yeah, I mean, and it was a powerful video, and it was, but delivered as you'd expect with the professionalism that she is known for. Mm-hmm. And, to say that she was blindsided, to admit, what had happened was incredibly, was brave, and was also authentic. And I think that's why Canadians, have come to, enjoy her broadcast, follow her. It's the authenticity. It's the trust that she delivers. It's the, the ability to navigate, all the news, and it's all the news, the nuances of the news, and deliver it into our homes in the evenings and on special broadcasts. It's just, you just don't get that often. And when you talk about Lloyd and, and Peter, given the hero's exit, yeah, I mean, there was definitely a double standard put in place. And again, it comes down to that humanity. I mean, Lisa is, an on-air anchor, but she's still a person, and a person that we've come to trust. We've let this person, into our lives, and we expect better. And that's why I, echo the sentiment that I'm hearing on social, which is, this is not right. This is not how you do things. And then to see the response that, the company has had, or the lack of response, or their version of a response, is just confounds me as to why it is happening this way. And, as a communicator, this is a brand and reputation crisis.
So talking about the reputation crisis and the BellMedia's response, there's some very smart people at BellMedia and their public relations department that should have been able to identify that this was going to be a potential problem, and how they communicated that to the C-suite, who then made the final decision to go ahead with this type of firing, confounds me and as you point out, a lot of people. What should they have done? How should they have approached this?
Well, you hire a comms team because they are professional. They talk to people, they monitor different sort of, communications channels. They're the ones who have the finger on the pulse of what people are saying, how people are acting, both internally and externally. And those are the people you've obviously hired. They are the professionals, and you should be listening to them and having them at the table, bringing them into, the decision-making process, because they're going to give you good guidance. That's what communicators are trained to do. And, not listening to that guidance, it can be fraught with peril. And we've seen, in the last 2 weeks, we have seen a delayed response. And then when all of us, because it's public, we start to see, what the response is, which was more of a corporate speak rather than an actual authentic response, where you didn't need to, have a deep examination of what was going on. You could just go to any social feed. You could pick up, sort of the articles and the coverage in your competitors to see what was being said, that there was this outrage. So why delay? Classic, sort of crisis training will tell you, respond immediately. You may not know all the answers, but still acknowledge that you hear people. But then to come out with a response that is pretty much a non-response, and actually went far in, my interpretation of blaming Lisa for not sticking with the plan, which was to announce her departure. Like, she has to announce her own firing on the 11 o'clock news. That just doesn't make any sense to me. Then to have an internal town hall where questions aren't actually answered authentically, and other sources, and I'm picking up all of this maybe as other, sort of viewers of your podcast and yourself, Marcel, are following, the media accounts, both on social and in traditional media. We're reading all this, and then that's cut short. And then you start to hear what else is going on in the whole sort of listing of other people who have been treated badly and shabbily by the company. And so you just kind of look at that and you go, okay, so now we're in a vacuum of any response. You're starting to have other people come forward with their shared experience, or people are starting to look at other things. And this is where we start to get the other comments about, decisions around who made the decision to let, Lisa's hair go gray. Well, now you've magnified this and you've amplified this conversation. And so at each step, the company, Bell had this opportunity to work with its professionals. And I'm not sure why they didn't listen. To think that this would be go away. And we can all admit that, outrage on social does have a bit of a shelf life. But this is 2 weeks now. Even today, before I joined you, Marcel, it's trending again. And you also have marketers coming on board, as you mentioned, Dove, Sports Illustrated, Wendy's. And it's just continuing to add to, sort of this, to, to the problem at hand. And, you hire communicators because they are professional. They're going to give you the good guidance. And if you don't listen to that, as I said, it's fraught with peril. And at any time, this story needed, and this situation needed clarity. It needed authenticity. It needed, genuine humanity in terms of how we address and work with people, both, internally, the journalists that work there and the production crew and other employees, as well as the Canadian public.
So, it's interesting. You raise a lot of good points. But for me, I'm looking at it and I see there's an element of ageism and sexism, involved in here. Think about, again, we talked about Peter Mansbridge and Lloyd Robertson. Generally, men, myself included, I have a receding hairline and I'm getting up there in age. Sometimes referred to as silver foxes or have great experience and things like that. And yet a woman of the same caliber, is kind of pushed aside, make room for somebody younger to come up the ranks. And so you don't see the same number of women in senior positions, whether they're at banks or in major companies, who have a wealth of experience and are not given their due. They're kind of shown the door and say, well, it's time for you to exit gracefully and go off into retirement. But men, in their 70s, 80s, and older, are brought onto boards of companies, are brought onto different areas, and are celebrated for their past accomplishments and for their experience. And so I see this huge double standard that's out there that, really what I think this does is shine a light on it.
It does. I mean, this has raised the conversation. And, changing a logo, I'm a big fan of Wendy's, favorite burger joint. And I love what they did because it raises awareness. It elevates the conversation. Yet I have to ask, when does real meaningful change happen? What does that look like? And I have to...
So what does it look like?
Well, this is the $1 million question, isn't it? I mean, you're right. It is a double standard. We are, I'm bombarded every single day if I watch the news about, sort of from ads that tell me to fight the signs of aging. It's like, okay, right? I'm reminded. And the thing about, somebody, of Lisa's caliber letting their hair go gray, amazing. It was a common shared experience during the pandemic with salons being closed, right? It was an acknowledgement that, there are greater things in the world to worry about than the color of someone's hair. And then, but to assume that, gray hair is equated to age, and is equated to, sort of on your way out, it is wrong. And there is a huge double standard. And how does that change? Well, it changes first with conversation. It changes with, companies really walking the walk and talking the talk. If I look at sort of, when I started to examine, sort of what was going on, I started to do a deep dive into some of, sort of, Bell's, board of directors, right? And there's, they've got some high quality people there who've done a lot in the space of, for women. And I'm like, okay, so maybe there's a CSR and ESG sort of approach to this. Maybe there's a way that, conversations can take place of shared experiences. Now I'm, from the media accounts, I understand that, sort of Bell is going to do an internal review, and I'm like, all right, but what are the goals? What are the mandates? Is it just, a stunt? Or is it going to lead to meaningful change? Is it going to raise that dialogue? Because as much as it's nice to have these companies, really talk about it, and I applaud them for it. And I got a good chuckle out of Wendy's. And obviously, the Dove campaign is, in keeping with their overall sort of women's empowerment, as it comes and speaks to beauty and well-being. And, Sports Illustrated, I mean, it's a big discussion. Ageism is something that, is not too far, out there for a lot of women. It's something that we think about. And I really want change to happen. And the only way that I can kind of wrestle with some of that is shop with my wallet, send my letters, do my public sort of, outreach to say, hey, this isn't right, whether that be through letters or social, but to take it off the pages of social and really take action. Shop with my wallet, send my letter in, as I said. I'm very fortunate to have a daughter who is now getting into the world and is, I have a privileged position as an educator to help get that next generation of people who are going to go into the workforce aware, to ask the questions, and, as a communicator, to demand to be at the table, to say, hey, we see things. This is how things are going to play out. Listen to us. Help us to help you navigate, the path forward.
So the last few minutes that we have, it's not been a great couple of weeks or months for communications companies. Obviously, we're focused on Bell Media, but Rogers had a similar problem, not related to an issue with an employee, but they had that massive blackout of their system, and they were not very swift and sure-footed in their response. So here are two of Canada's leading communications companies who can't communicate. I'm astounded that this was able to happen, and I'm sure it's going to make a great case study for somebody maybe at Humber or at one of the universities in the coming months.
Yeah, the Rogers outage delay. I mean, something's going on. It's not like people are, isolated. They're connected. They're going to find things out. And by not responding quickly creates a vacuum where a lot of different things can be said, done, and explored in that short period of time.
You need to be out there ahead of what's happening so that people know where things are and what your response is to the situation. Not just hole up in your towers and say that we're trying to figure it out.
And believe your own PR, your own hubris, right? There's something to be said about communicate quickly and then communicate authentically. You're dealing with real people who have entrusted and have a relationship, even if it's, not the best, but there is a degree of trust and understanding, that you're working with these companies and you expect the courtesy of a response, even if you don't like the response, it doesn't negate the fact that you were responded to, I guess,
Mm-hmm. And we haven't really seen much of that side of things. Look, there were literally tens of thousands of businesses that were impacted, small businesses who couldn't make sales because of it, who lost revenue. I'm sure that there's going to be any number of lawsuits and class action against Rogers over this fiasco of the outage. I know that Parliament has looked into it, that CRTC, etc. But and Rogers bills itself as the most reliable network in the country. I think that tagline might disappear over the next little while.
Well, careful what you say, right? Because, you just have to peel things off a little bit, and you might find that's not really, true. But I will say I've started to see, and I mean, I'm a big consumer of traditional media as well. I've started to see the ads. I also have seen the print ads. I mean, Rogers is coming out with something. So it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen in the days ahead with Bell. But I don't think this is the last we've heard of this. This conversation is going to continue. I mean, there is a need for real accountability. And I think, that will start with, authentic, I should say, also authentic accountability, and really coming, clean with what happened, where things went off the rails. Admitting a mistake is part of that. Just saying you're sorry isn't enough. That sorry has to come with accountability. Meanwhile, again, gutted that this happened to Lisa. It's opened up an entirely huge conversation. There's still a lot of things that are not working, and we need to continue to fight for that equality and fight to get rid of that double standard.
On that note, Annette, I'd love to have you back, and we'll follow this story a little bit later and see what comes out of it. Really a pleasure having you on the podcast today. Annette Borgers is a professor at Humber College who teaches in the Public Relations graduate program in the Faculty of Media and Creative Arts. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Marcel.